I'm sure you.
Thanks. If anyone did decide to write down questions on index cards, or you want to write a question anonymously, feel free to do so and pass them down, and we'll collect them. So I'm sure the film elicited some emotions and lots of thoughts. And what I always like to say to parents is just, take a breath and don't freak out too much, because there are some things some very specific things we can do to move things in the right direction. I'm so happy that there are students here, by the way. And I want to just first actually ask the students, if any of you students that are here, if you have any comments or questions, or is there anything that you might want to do differently after watching the film? Or maybe you want to suggest something to your parents. Would any of the students have thoughts? Like, did you like it? Were you surprised? Anyone? Think about it. I'm putting you on the spot. Could you relate to anything? Was there any scene that you thought was funny or you liked? Well, think about it. You'll raise your hands as we're talking, because once your parents start talking, maybe you'll want to talk. Because you guys, I know, have a lot of important things to share, and you should be talking to your parents about your opinions about it. So, I just want to start by emphasizing that the goal for our families really needs to be a healthy balance. That technology is incredible, and we can love technology, and we could use technology as a tool, and we will continue to do so. But we have to think about technology as a tool versus a trap, I like to say, or in the film she says a tool versus a treat, right? So there's ways we use technology, it's a tool, and there are ways we use it, that it can trap us in. It could be for entertainment, but keeps us sucked in longer. So that's a great conversation to be having in our families. Am I using it as a tool, or am I getting sucked into this trap here? And finding balance is the key. That we know that the research tells us that more time off screens than on screens is what we're looking for, right? So we could be thinking about a healthy balance and tool versus trap, because tech is obviously here to stay. So I just want to, open it up to questions, thoughts, ideas from parents. Were there certain scenes that stood out for you? I'm happy to answer questions and facilitate the discussion. So let's get the conversation going. Any scene that really stood out for you that you felt was significant? Thanks.
One scene that stood out to me is when the.
Thank you.
I don't need the mic, but that's all right.
For streaming, you did.
Okay, I think that the scene where the little boy tells about how he can basically pull a fast one over his mom.
Oh yeah.
And I think I think we've all seen that with our kids who are like, oh, I'm doing homework, and. Personal story here, like we go to the teachers and we say, man, you are giving a lot of homework. It's now my son is on his device a very long time doing this homework. And then we come to realize that the homework only takes like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but he is taking the whole hour to do it because he's switching pages and stuff like that. So that scene specifically, maybe it was very relatable.
You can relate, absolutely. Yeah. How many others can relate? It's yeah. Yes, it's a big challenge that we're using technology, we're using screens for homework and schoolwork because of that, right? So one thing we can think about is the bigger the screen, the better. Especially the younger they are, the bigger the screen, the better. So if we're talking about watching shows or movies or even YouTube, the bigger the screen, if they're on a smart TV, the best. Or a computer, a desktop, or then a laptop, iPads and smartphones, the worst. Because the bigger the screen means you can see what's going on. You could look over their shoulder, pass by, see what they're playing, what they're doing. So in my home, both my 10-year-old and my 16-year-old have an area in our main living space where their computer is set up, where they have access to a computer. So I can see what's going on. There's many times where my 16-year-old tells me he's going to go work on his paper, and I happen to walk by towards the kitchen, and I see him go, oh, click, click, click. He's like, I know, I'm going back to it, right? You know, we want them to know that we're looking over their shoulders. If you can keep schoolwork on a separate device, even better, right? Some families are able to do that. But we need to be talking to our kids about that, right? So we are going to monitor. We want to teach you how to focus on something, finish it, and then move on. You know, work, then play. And as they get older, that's a really important lesson to be teaching them. One of the concerns that we're seeing is what's called attention fragmentation. So kids are having a really hard time focusing because the short form content that has got us hooked is training young minds to need that quick dopamine rush that comes in that short form content, right? So for adults, yeah, we can get hooked in, but our brains are fully developed. You know, we spent plenty of years sitting in middle school, high school, and college listening to professors talk for an hour about the same topic, but they haven't yet. And so we need to make sure that we're teaching them how you focus, and you take a break, and then you go back to focusing. I know you have a question.
You answered it, actually. I was wondering why the larger screen, if that was more of if it had a different impact, but it was just visibility from a parent standpoint.
It's visibility. It's also them. So if you're watching a TV, you're probably sitting on the couch. So you're actually seeing the world around you. When they're on a device like this, they're completely lost. They lose a sense of space and time and who they are and where they are in relation to the world. So that's really important. We want to do that for them. The same is true for the length of content. The longer the content, the better. Because think about it, a movie or a show, it has characters, it has a storyline, it probably has conflicts and resolution, some silly, humor, maybe a lesson, a moral, right? YouTube, probably not, definitely not. TikTok, definitely not, right? A lot of it is designed to elicit emotion, whether it's humor or disgust. And so we want our kids to be watching longer form content. So I just told my daughter this afternoon, when you're done with everything and you have dinner and you're going to go, watch, you could be on YouTube for 20 minutes and then watch a movie. What do you want to watch? And at first she's like, I watched all the good movies. I'm like, you are so lucky. You have access to every single movie. When I was a kid, I turned on what was on, and that's what I was stuck with. Right? So we can find plenty of fun movies. So the way we help curate the content for our kids is really critical because we want to make sure that they're exposed to age-appropriate content. Most parents don't realize that their kids are exposed to inappropriate adult content online all the time. And so taking the time to understand how to use parent controls is also really important. So like, for example, on YouTube, they can have a child account or they can be in restricted mode, and that's really important. Same goes for any app they're on. They could be on an age-appropriate level. And I can talk more about social media if those of you have questions. How many of you have kids who have smartphones and are on social media? How many of you have kids in elementary school? Okay, and middle school? And high school? Okay, so we have, it's great that we have a lot of you here across all ages. I love talking to parents with elementary age students who don't have smartphones yet because you can really set them up for success. If you have kids who are already on smartphones, it's fine. But the big question I always get is, what do I do once they're already on? And the answer is to just pull it back in a little bit, like rein it in a little bit. So you want to decrease the amount of time that they're spending. For those of you students who are here, I'm going to put you on the spot again. I saw some of you have your phone. Do you know what the screen time setting is on your phone? What is screen time? Do you know? Exactly. You could see how much time you're on your apps. You could see how much time you're on your phone. And by the way, adults, you can check your stats too. You could see your time. You could see how much time you spend per app. You could see the number of times you pick up your phone per day. And you can see the number of notifications you get. Girls, have you ever checked your stats? Do you know how much time you spend? If you had to guess, about how many hours per day do you think you're on your phone?
Like one.
One. Okay. You'll check. I won't put you on the spot to check. You can check later. How many notifications do you think you get? How many notifications do you girls think you get on your phone a day? Just guess. You think it's like 20 or 200? What do you think? 20. Okay. So you think it's on the lower side. So there was a study done last year, and the average teenager gets 450 notifications per day, but like 10 to 15% get over 4,000 notifications per day. So when computers and the internet were first invented, you had to access it on a big computer, right? And then think about also the huge TVs, the tube TVs that we had when we were kids, okay? Now imagine strapping the computer onto a kid's back and the TV onto their front, right? And would you ever let them walk out of the house like that? No. But because the technology is so advanced and it's so sleek and streamlined, it fits into our pocket. It is lightweight. And so we let them take it with them wherever they go. But really, it's kind of, absurd that we do, because they're designed to be distraction devices, hundreds, thousands of notifications per day. Has anyone heard the phrase attention economy? Okay, so attention economy is basically what the technology companies are working with. So they're working to capture as much of our attention as possible. That's the competition that they're in, right? So they have spent many resources and have used advanced behavior science to determine what's going to keep us on as long as possible. Because if they don't do it, they're going to lose out to the app that's doing it, right? Have any of you heard of TikTok? Just kidding. Of course you've heard of TikTok. They mastered the gaining our attention through their algorithm and through the short form video, and everyone else followed because of it, right? And so the tech companies and the social media companies were not designing their products with the best interests of our kids and teens in mind, and yet the majority of teens are on social media, and we know there are some significant harms to their mental health. It's one of the things that I'm going to talk more deeply about when I come back in January to really share some of the statistics and the trends there. But I feel very confident in saying that we know social media, overuse of social media in particular, will harm teens, and that a healthy balance is the key, is really the key.
Piece of it. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
In the beginning of the film, when they were talking about, the pouches and different ways that schools are preventing the students from having, their devices, a lot of the arguments that people have presented, especially for older students in the high school, is, well, they need to learn how to use them responsibly, when to put them away, when not to, when they can take them out, because when they go on to college and to life, they're going to need to do that. And I'm just curious what sort of your reaction is to that side of it. We've heard all kinds of things, their brains aren't developed enough yet to make those decisions, or they are, or, just curious your reaction.
Yeah, I agree. So the technology is designed to be incredibly attractive. It is. The apps that are on the technology is designed to be very addictive and attractive, and it is. If they have them, they will look at them. I've never, ever have you ever seen a teenager that has a device on them and they don't look at it within a few minutes, right? So I am a big proponent of phone-free schools, and there's, different varying degrees of the ways that schools are implementing it. I'd like to see teenagers making eye contact with each other, and being able to socialize and develop relationships. I've talked to the Board of Ed in my town, which is in Montville, and because in our high school, we do not yet have a phone-free policy. My son's a junior, and we were talking the other day about something in class, and I said, well, wasn't everyone talking before the bell rang. You know, and he said, no one's talking before the bell rang. They're on their phones. So, you know, when we think about being in high school and those moments to make connections, right, I think it's really important that we are encouraging them. Some classrooms have pouches, they could put it in, great. Or at least when they walk in the door, it's going in a pouch, you know, then they can have those interactions. So there's lots of different ways that different districts are thinking about this issue, but it is, you know, a conversation to continue having, and I encourage you to share, you know, your opinions, you know, with your principals and administrators, so that they can know what you're thinking. A lot of times, administrators hear from parents that are against change. You know, if you support change, you want to make your voice heard and known. I think that's really important. All of the law enforcement officers that I've spoken to say that there's no connection between students having their devices and them being safer during an emergency. And on the contrary, at a local district, there was thankfully a false alarm that there was an intruder in the high school. Within 10 minutes, so many parents had showed up at the school that the police officers couldn't even get into the parking lot, right? So it's just an example of if there was ever an emergency, we want our kids to be looking and listening to the adults around them that are there to keep them safe, right? On a slightly less, you know, emergency level, when I'm thinking about healthy coping and developing a sense of self and independence, if your kid reaches out to you because someone hurt their feelings, or because they didn't get a good grade, or because they're worried about how they're going to do on the test, and if they're texting you in that moment, and you're there to respond and give them feedback and give them help, they're not developing the skills they need to get through hard moments on their own. And that's so important. Right? We've heard helicopter parenting or micromanaging or overparenting. So many well-intentioned parents that want to be there to help are actually making it worse for their kids. We need to let them fail and fall on their faces in these years, middle school, elementary school, middle school, high school. Let them mess up and be embarrassed and make mistakes and have to struggle through when they're in environments with supportive teachers, in small communities. Like, this is where they have to learn those things so that when they get out in the world, they know how to do it. So I know I took your question to other places, but thanks, yeah. Thanks. Yes, over here. Thank you. Yeah, we could pass the microphone, perfect.
Okay, thank you. So I find that even if I have verbal buy-in to a daily screen time limit, when we hit that limit, it becomes a problem every single day. And my child, if I'm not constantly managing the clock, is going to go over the time limit. So, you know, and then it devolves into a fight, and it's predictable. I know it's going to happen. So I'm wondering what the recommendations and best practices are for that, because I don't want to physically have to arrest it away from him, but sometimes I do.
Yeah, great question. What devices are you managing in your home?
Actually, limited, a laptop and a phone, because I haven't caved into getting him his own, and that's also a daily argument at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm very close to doing that, you know, but
Yep,
I'm really concerned about it. So.
Sure, great,
Yeah.
okay. So we need to use the technology to limit the technology. You know, years ago, it was very challenging. You had to use these third-party softwares to try to manage it, but now it's built into the smartphones, iPhones or Androids, iPads, tablets, and I'll talk to you about the laptops. So first of all, on the smart devices, you can go into settings, and you choose screen time, it's called, or it's called digital well-being, you know, if it's an Android. And you can set the time where it goes off, and you put a password. So you have to play with this. So I really encourage parents to do this on your own device, like later today. Set your own downtime, put a password, see how it works, and I'm happy to show some people and stick around to help you do it. Once you set the downtime, it goes off. It's incredible. It takes the fight out of it. So my 16-year-old, his phone goes off at 9:30 on school nights. Every single app grays out except the actual phone, so if he needed to call someone in an emergency, and he has FaceTime and music. So if he wants to talk to a friend late at night, fine, like I used to do it too. You know, something was going on at school and we would talk. That's fine, but you're not going on YouTube or social media. You don't need that, right? So you set the time where it goes off. You also can set limits per app. So YouTube 20 minutes or 30 minutes, that's it. Instagram 20 or 30 minutes, that's it. So that's really important. Fine, that works, right? Exactly. For other devices in your home, laptops and computers, everyone has Wi-Fi in their home. Whatever you're using, whatever provider you're using, Verizon, Google Home, Optimum, they have parent controls now. You have to figure out whether you have an app or it's online. Call your provider. Again, parenting takes a lot of work. It always has, and it takes more work now, but it's worth putting the time in to figure it all out now. Very worth it. Call your provider. How do I set limits on the device, on my kids' devices in my home? So I use Google Home. It's all these little, Wi-Fi, all these little white little Wi-Fi routers in my house. And I can name each device, my daughter's computer, my son's computer, the iPad, and the phones. And my daughter's 10, so her laptop goes off at 7:30 at night. That's it. So sometimes she's watching a show or something, and I all of a sudden hear, "Aww," boom. That's it. Time to go shower. That's it. It's wonderful, right? So you have to use the controls, so you don't have to try to fight and grab. It's impossible, right? So take time to research it, this weekend. And then it's really important to have open conversations with your kids and let them know, I'm setting these limits because it's my job as a parent to protect you. And we know that too much time on screens, video games, watching videos, social media is bad for your brain. It's bad for your brain development. It's bad for your mental health. That's it. You wouldn't give them soda first thing in the morning as the only meal they ate of the day, right? So we know what's good for them. We're going to do that. You tell them, this is why I'm doing it. I'm also going to look at your devices. So as they're getting older, I will check your phone. I will know the password. I'll check your phone. Do I want to sit and read every text? No. Am I going to? No. But if ever something's going on and I feel concerned, I'm going to look. This is very important as a parent. And same thing goes on the iPad. The first time you give the kid access to an iPad or iMessage, I'm going to look. Why? Because if your kid knows that you're going to take a peek, they're not going to send that rude text. Or they're going to think twice before they open something up that's inappropriate. Or someone sends them something inappropriate and they're going to be like, Mom, it wasn't me. Right? It wasn't me. What do I do about this? Right? And having those types of conversations is really important. What do I do in those situations? Yeah. So hopefully that helps. It's a great question.
Hi again.
Hello again.
All right. So, with that being said, we're pretty tech savvy in the house in terms of getting the Wi-Fi to go off and things like that. But I've been outsmarted, and I'm first to admit it. Because there are certain websites, whether they are a gaming website, that for whatever reason, when the Wi-Fi cuts off, as long as they have the browser open, it allows them to actually play on it, on the school computer. And then there's also something where they can go on to YouTube or whatever, and although it doesn't let them play the video, they can actually grab the URL and throw it into a school-sanctioned save search video thing that they can convert it or something and watch it from that program.
Wow.
And that's the kind of stuff that we have to deal with.
Yeah, you got some kids who are destined to be, techies and computer sciences.
So these are even though you're trying to implement these parental controls, there's always seems to be a workaround that it's very hard just to stay on top of it.
It is. It absolutely is. I mean, parents up against a lot. I had it in my home years ago with my son. It was the 3DS. You know what that is? It's like before Switch. It's the Nintendo little flip up handheld game. I didn't realize it was connected to the internet. And he actually came to us to tell us because he was getting into some things through the internet on this device, and he didn't want to be, and he was thankfully he came to us to talk about it. So, whether it's screens or any rule you have in your home, if your kids are pushing up against it, it's an opportunity for the conversation. it's an opportunity to say, like, look, this is a warning. I see you're doing it. Look, I see you're savvy, but it's not acceptable in our home. So if it happens again, then, consequence, right? And so that becomes up to you as a family to decide, how are you enforcing certain limits. If you see that your kids are pushing limits, maybe there is a way to channel that into something positive. So you seem like you can figure out how to get around these things. Are you interested in learning how to code? Like can we set up for you an opportunity for coding or robotics or game design? Like think about that. This is obviously one of their talents and their gifts, and how to foster that and support that, right? Because finding opportunities for our kids to take healthy risks is also really important in this generation, and another job we have. Because in all the generations before, like when I was a kid, after school, there were kids outside on the block. I didn't have to arrange a play date. It was just like, open the door, go outside, who's here? We're biking back and forth, we're running back and forth, we're making up games, I'm hitting the baseball bat into the bee nest I didn't know was there, getting stung by bees, whatever else we were doing. Kids need risks to have fun and to develop skills. So they need to face challenges and take risks. In a generation of kids where childhood has become so screen-based, where are those risks? There's no three-dimensional risks. I was just reading a stat that the percentage of teen boys who break bones for the first time ever, because the CDC collects information from hospitals. This is the first time ever that teen boys are breaking their bones less than adult men, because they're playing video games or they're at home, right? So that's like very eye-opening. So we do have to get them out in the world more, going on adventures, because we live in very safe communities. We actually really, really do. One of the negatives for adults of social media is that a very small percentage of horrible things that happen becomes so magnified and viral that we think it's like overcoming our world, but it's actually not. And so we overprotect by mistake. We really need to give our kids opportunities for independence, So when they're, 10, when they're 9, 10, 11, like go out on your bikes around town with friends, go walk to the store and get groceries and come back. Find, opportunities for them to be independent. When they're older, they're capable of doing so much more. Get them out in the world taking risks. If anyone asks their kid, like, what's something you want to do that you think I might not let you do? They will all have an answer, right? Or get them going. And find one of those things that's like just over your comfort zone and let them do it. Obviously you talk to them about how they do it safe, make sure you're looking both ways before you cross the road, et cetera, et cetera. If you're using a very sharp knife, point it down. But then let them do it and let them have fun taking risks. Because as I said before, the content is designed to elicit emotion and excitement, and so that's why they're drawn to it over and over and over. We have to make the real world exciting again, because for so many kids it's boring. And that is on us as a society. And so, in the concluding statements of the film, they're talking about working together as a community. If you've heard of Jonathan Haidt's new book, The Anxious Generation, which came out this past spring, and I highly recommend it, one of the things he talks about is that this is a collective action problem. And there's a collective action solution. If we all agree to make these changes, to delay smartphones, delay social media as long as possible, and give our kids more independence, that we can make a change together. And so what that means is finding a few friends, finding parents of your kids' friends, and open up this conversation with them and say, I'm really concerned and I want to delay social media, I want to delay smartphones, or I want to pull it back. When they're together, I'm going to ask them to put their phones in a basket. Do you like that idea? Can we all do that together? Because as long as your kid's not the only one, they're going to be okay. If they're the only one, it doesn't work. Yeah.
Lauren, do you want to give one last sage piece of advice as we sort of wrap up here?
Let's see.
One thing we should take away?
Yeah,
I think more about.
Yeah, the most important thing is setting the limits so you have that balance, right? So it's not about taking it all away, it's about getting them off screens more than they're on screens. So for young kids, an hour max a day, elementary age, hour max. Middle school, an hour and a half to 2, and high school, it really should be max 2 hours a day. We know that the adolescents that are on more than 2 hours a day are the ones that are at a higher risk for anxiety, depression, and more negative mental health symptoms. So,
Lauren, thank you so much. We appreciate you moderating the conversation. Yeah. And we look forward to welcoming you back in January to talk more about social media.
Great.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for engaging in the conversation, and we look forward to future sessions and staying engaged with each other. Thanks, guys.